Let's talk about 2020 for a second, okay? And I keep hearing kind of the same thing over and over again. People are just joking around or they're being serious and they're like, we're going to forget all about 2020 and it doesn't exist. When New Year's happens, we're going to take a shot and we're going to forget it ever happened. No. Stop saying that. People who say that are invalidating all of the impactful and important things that have happened this year. And you are saying it is okay to just forget what happened and to just move on. We should not forget, okay? We should remember and we should learn from the things that happened this year. So I thought I would put together a positive video of the things I learned in 2020. Okay, I'm not bashing this year. I am trying to be positive and I'm trying to encourage other people to look at it in a similar light. So here are 20 things I learned in 2020. Number 1, everything I learned about US history is wrong. If you don't know, now you know. Hi, I'm a United States citizen. I have been all my life. I went to public schooling here and survived. It has come to my attention this year that the majority of things I was taught are extremely biased, missing very key elements, and the history is just skewed. I had a history teacher once who said, history is written by the victors. That same history teacher, by the way, is actually a convicted pedophile now. So in 2021, I am going to be focusing on relearning and keeping an open mind about things that I may have been taught that perhaps left out some key elements or facts that I need to relearn, or elements about our society that are taught and that they're a certain way. The police, for example, just look up what the police used to be, because they're not what anyone thinks they are. Moving on. Number 2, ignorance is forgivable. Stupidity is not. So let me define both ignorance and stupidity so we're all kind of on the same page. Ignorance is, quote, lack of knowledge or information. That's it. It just means that you never learned something. For example, I am ignorant to African American history because the only part of African American history that the United States seems to think is relevant is when they were in chains. I was referencing number 1. Moving on, stupidity is, quote, behavior that shows a lack of good sense or judgment. So when someone is ignorant and presented with facts that are backed up by sources and still refuse to change their views, they go from being ignorant to stupid. And the reason I bring this up and the reason I learned all this is because I noticed that on a lot of news media and social media and stuff, people are always calling someone ignorant, you're so ignorant, blah blah blah, in an angry, insulting way. And please stop using ignorant in place of the words you actually mean. And the words you actually mean are stupid, stubborn, bigot, or radical. Those are the words people most often mean from what I have seen. But beyond the social media and news media scale, it's just to let you all know that ignorance isn't really an insult. It just means someone isn't educated, and it shouldn't be treated like an insult, because if someone truly is ignorant, then instead of insulting them, you should try to show them the facts, show them your point, and if at that point they're still not believing you or still not agreeing with you, then at that point it becomes something else depending on the context of the situation. The third thing I learned this year is veganism. So I had a lot of time during quarantine to binge watch shows and documentaries. One such documentary was What the Health, and I highly recommend you watch it. I think it was on Netflix. I'll put it in the description. And it exposes a lot of what's wrong with the meat and dairy industries and why animal byproducts are bad for our health. A lot of it was shocking. I mean, you think you're going to go into it like kind of knowing what they're going to talk about, and they talk about those things too, but you just have to see it, you know? The documentary completely convinced me to go vegan, and we literally went vegan almost overnight. And we're vegan fully for about like 3 or 4 days before we realized that where we live and the resources at our disposal do not give us a very fulfilling vegan lifestyle. And by that, I mean that there's not a lot of vegan options where we live. And you guys are like, oh, we'll just go to the grocery store and buy stuff. Well, you also have to think like you have to take the time to learn all those meals. Think about all the meals you've eaten in your life and how you discovered that you liked them. And then think of all the meals that you make. So to completely change your entire diet and your entire way of life, you would have to have a tremendous amount of knowledge to cook foods that you don't normally cook. A lot of like vegan foods and alternatives for things I had never eaten before or knew how to cook. So in 2021, one of the things that we've already started doing this. We started slowly. So, we cold turkey went to veganism. The pun was not intended, but now I intend it. The point is, we went vegan, and then we realized how difficult it was, and that we should slow down, take a step back, and try to do it little by little, and that would be the easiest way for us to transition our lifestyle. The fourth thing I learned in 2020 is regarding relationships. So this year challenged relationships for a lot of people, no matter if it was family, friends, or loved ones, because where distance was created in some social aspects of our life, it was taken away in others. I'm talking about quarantine, of course. Your social work life, your social life with friends completely ended. And the only social life you got to have was on social media or with your family, confined in your house, however big that may be. I live in a 500 square foot apartment, so a closet for most people. More specifically, divorce rates are at record highs this year. And it's because people are realizing that the person they married is not someone they can actually live with. And it's not funny. It's not funny. Divorce is a serious thing. But marriage is also a serious thing. So it's really interesting to see all these people who got married, and divorce rates are already pretty high in America. So seeing that they're kind of at record highs this year, it's like, wow, it really is this idea, in my eyes, capitalism is pushing this wedding industry and pushing young couples to get married when they're not ready. And our society and our generations, in my opinion, don't fully understand what relationships are really about anymore. You have to communicate. And something I realized this year is that people do not understand what communication means. You have to recognize each other's limits. You have to recognize each other's stress limits. We started implementing things in our relationship to indicate to each other our stress limits. We've put kind of structured our communication in our relationship so we know if something is bothering one of us, what we can say, what we can't say. We take into account certain situations like tones of voice we might use. We try to tailor our communication, not censor it, but tailor it so that we're not at each other's throats screaming at each other like most people seem to think is communication nowadays. We try to listen to each other, and we try to be very honest. And sometimes being honest means we have to be very blunt about certain situations. And it's because we understand that, there's no sweet coating or words around this situation. We just have to say it. The other is usually very reasonable and responsive to that. And we understand that we're not trying to insult or hurt each other. We only want to better further our relationship in a positive way. And to do that, we have to overcome obstacles. Number 5, staying informed versus doom scrolling. So I used to believe I needed to keep my Facebook and Twitter so that I could stay informed and up to date on current events, but doing that day in and day out this year took a huge toll on my mental health, because most social media is thriving off of the drama of all of it. Just news story after news story of crazy, sad, enraging shit. It kind of came down to, I can't do anything about this, you can't do anything about this, you're just screaming into a void, and sometimes that helps, but for the most part, I realized that it was very detrimental to my mental health to keep checking the news every day, because nothing was changing and nothing was going to change at that point. And it really makes you lose hope in the world. And that's really not a good thing, because that'll send you into a spiraling depression that just sucks. So take my advice, turn off the Twitter and Facebook notifications, or completely delete them from your phone altogether, which is what I did, and just focus on being in the present with the people around you, with your friends, maybe just with yourself. Just be with yourself. Just read a book, write, journal, because it's very detrimental. And while it's important to stay informed, it's more important that you take care of yourself. Way more important. Number 6, you can make an impact and share your thoughts, but you can't fix the world. The point I'm trying to make isn't that like, oh, you'll never achieve your dreams or make a change or make a difference in the community. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. What I'm trying to say is that in school and in the media, especially in the US, like with superhero movies and stuff, they teach us that one person can change everything. One person can fix all of the problems. They can make everything go away. And all year, I've been seeing people put so much hope in one person. I put so much hope and faith in Bernie Sanders, this one dude, right, who was running for president. And I believed in him so much, and I believed if we could just elect him, all of our problems would go away. And that is not true. And that is not fair to Bernie Sanders, nor is it fair to myself to let myself believe that lie. Greta Thunberg is actually a great example of this. She's made a huge impact on the climate crisis and educating people and activism, but she alone cannot fix the climate crisis. And I think this is a really important thing that I learned this year, especially with all the crazy world-ending things that are happening, is that we can make an impact and we can share our feelings, our personal experiences, and our thoughts on certain situations, but we can't always fix them. And one person alone certainly cannot tackle the things that are affecting us right now. Number 7 is something that I've kind of been dealing with for the past few years, but it really came to light this year, and that is that your job does not denote your worth in life, or at least it shouldn't. So in a capitalist society, generally you hear the term like, oh, you want to go get a college education or you'll just be flipping burgers at McDonald's for the rest of your life. And honestly, it's like a really terrible statement, because college is not for everyone. That is a strong belief of mine. And there are jobs you can get without a college education that pay way more than some people who have majors with jobs, right? What an insult to like anyone who works at McDonald's, that like their life is somehow less than anyone else who has college education. So a little perspective. I'm a college dropout. I was on scholarship in college when I dropped out, and I've gone through more than 5 jobs in the last 3 years. But does that make me less of a person than someone who's graduated and still hasn't found a job? If you answered yes, you might be a shitty person. Like, no, everyone is equal, or at least everyone should be equal. And the fact that our society has started to value people based on their socioeconomic status or the job opportunities surrounding them or afforded to them is unreal. And I mean, I guess it's always been happening, but like, look at grocery store workers right now. People shit on them all the time. Literally, just these awful like customers want to be so rude to these grocery store clerks. They're literally like risking exposing themselves to COVID every single day to possibly hundreds of people, depending on how busy their store is, just so people can buy the things they need. And like, that has made them some of the most valued people this year. So just a little thing to consider. Okay, moving on. Number 8. If there was a year to learn self-care, now was the year to do it. In quarantine, we had lots of time. And some people didn't go into quarantine. I was a lucky person who got to go into quarantine. And in that time, alone with myself for 24 hours a day, well, not completely alone. I live with my partner. But different issues have arisen this year relating to mental health. A lot of people were isolated alone or isolated with people that they don't like, and they had to deal with that. For me, completely different issues showed up. My anxiety developed in a very interesting way this year, where I was at the store and it was kind of busy, like busier than I expected it to be. And, I was wearing my mask, I was keeping distance from everyone, but they were not keeping distance from me. And I got very overwhelmed all of a sudden. I literally forgot why I was even there. And at some point, I just sat down on the floor and put my headphones in and just started listening to music, trying to calm down. And eventually I called my partner, or I think I texted her, and I was like, I have forgotten why I'm here. Please help me. And that wasn't something that happened before. So self-care means knowing your limits. It means knowing your triggers. It means taking care of yourself. It means learning when to say no. It's all of those things, and it's going to be completely unique to everyone. So self-care, that is something I learned this year. That is the point of number 8. Number 9. Number 9, I wrote communication ? So communication is kind of like an ever-evolving thing, and it kind of goes into the relationships point I made earlier, but really overall communication in general. So what I've started doing is communication is also kind of a part of my self-care. Instead of saying I'm fine when someone asks me, like, how are you doing? I'm honest. Like when someone's like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I'm okay, like I'm a little worried about this. I've been checking up on this, or I'll say like, oh, today was great. I got this done and I painted this. And you should find things that maybe you're not communicating within yourself, not just externally how you're talking to people, but how are you talking to yourself? And how are you translating that for other people? And make sure you're being honest, because it's really important for people to understand where you're coming from, in my personal opinion. Number 10. Okay, so I learned how to make bread more out of necessity than actual desire, because I went to 3 stores one day and all of them had no bread for some reason, but they all had quick rising yeast and flour. So I got that and I learned how to make bread and really cook in general, because quarantine meant all the restaurants were closed. So I had to learn how to make some new meals, because stroganoff got old after like the first 2 weeks. Making stroganoff over and over again for dinner. You get tired of it. You start making weird shit in quarantine. I'm talking some weird stuff. Number 11. I was barely taught anything in school about my physical health or my body or how to take care of myself. And maybe that's different around the country, but where I grew up in public schooling, you got physical education class, and it was literally just run on this track, and they taught you cardio, and they didn't teach you anything else. Like, when are schools going to start teaching kids yoga? When are they going to start teaching kids like actual proper dieting techniques, not just eat your vegetables? Like, why don't you teach kids how to prepare the vegetables? Why don't you teach them what not to eat? Why don't you teach them about possible side effects of certain things and how to look for that? And I'm not talking like young children, but as a high schooler, I could have definitely used some of that information, and I would have comprehended and understood it. And then in high school, I specifically remember there was a health education class, but a documentary I watched this year like disproved everything that health education class taught me. So what? So like I said, that's kind of related to number 1. In 2021, I will be, relearning food. This also goes with the veganism, all of that, We're relearning how to diet. Not like diet, but we're relearning. Oh my God. We, me, myself, and I, and my partner, are relearning how to eat to fulfill and nourish our bodies, our souls, our minds. Number 12. Oh my gosh. Okay, organization. I am a clean person. And I say that now in the only sliver of my apartment that is actually clean right now. But I swear. But I'm not organized. Okay? I've got a stack of art supplies over there. I've got a stack of books over there. I got a bucket of pine cones. Why do I have a bucket of pine cones? 'Cause Yule, holidays. I've got an aloe plant over there. And I've got a bunch of wires and computer things over there on that desk, which is why I'm not at the desk. This year, because I was in quarantine, I was able to declutter and organize a lot of stuff. And I learned a lot about organization and what works for me when organizing. And so that is what I'm going to continue focusing on in 2021 is organization, because let me tell you why. It reduces so much stress, number 1, because you can see everything and you feel like things are put together. Number 2 is that it will keep you from losing things. If you have a place where something goes all the time, it will keep you from losing things. I was always losing my ID and my debit card and my glasses. And now every time I take my glasses off, they go in my glasses case by the bed. Anytime I use my ID or my card, it goes back in the wallet, back in the purse. The purse goes by the door so that I don't lose it. Like, everything has a place. And at first, I thought that was kind of ridiculous. But this year, I have been convinced that organization is key. Especially if you have like anxiety, like me, and you get stressed out and overwhelmed very easily, especially this year with all the stressful, overwhelming things that are happening. I promise, organizing things and decluttering just like small portions. You don't have to do it all at once because that's overwhelming. Do it in sections. All of my bills, my overdue medical bills, they're in one place. And I still can't pay them, but they're in one place. Okay, this video is getting kind of long. I gotta speed it up. Number 13 is the triage stress system. I learned this from a TED Talk a few weeks ago, and it's very useful. I will link it in the description below. You can go watch it for yourself. It is very helpful. It goes something like this. You have certain tasks you need to complete in a day, right? The triage system has 3 colors. 4, really, but 3 main colors. Green, yellow, red. Green is a task that is easy. Green is a task that is not that important. It is important because it's on the list, but it is not life-threatening. It is not dire situation. Yellow is something that is serious. It is something that needs to get done quickly or it will become a red. And a red is critical. A red means I need to get this done as soon as possible or something bad might happen. There may be consequences that I cannot deal with. Red for me this year was 1 month. I don't have rent. How do I fix this situation? That was red, right? Yellow would be, hey, I need to go file a title for my car. That's a yellow. It doesn't need to be done immediately, but if not done in a timely fashion, it will become a red. Because if you don't file a title for your car in a certain amount of time, you can get in trouble, I think, in certain states. And then a green would be dishes. Dishes are still on the list, but if they don't get done, it's okay. All right? Unless, like, there's something wrong with your dishes that are going to, like, cause some kind of infectious mold. If they're molding, they are a red. Okay? If your dishes are molding, they're a red. But if they're just day-old dishes that you haven't done, they're a green. Finish your red and your orange, then do your dishes. Number 14. Introspection is important to growth. I've kind of covered this a little bit in the communication topic, but quarantine gave everyone a lot of isolation away from other people, a lot of quiet, and a lot of time in here. 2020 gave us a lot of time in our brains. Okay? And especially for me, I realized that it gave me time away from all those like thought bubbles and stuff. Like on social media when you get put in like a bubble and then like it just circulates the same information over and over again so that it like reinforces your beliefs and stuff and radicalizes you. Introspection is important to growth, and breaking away from social media is good for that, because the more isolated you are for yourself, the more true to yourself you can be, because you don't have a bunch of outside external influences telling you what to believe and what to think. So this year I learned introspection is really good for personal growth, and that it should be something people do. Like, take a day where you're not hanging out with friends, you're not looking at social media, you're just being with you, and you're thinking about things, and you're coming up with your own opinions about things. And then later you can revise those opinions when people present you with arguments to persuade you. But for the most part, you need to be true to who you are, and you need to come up with your own answers to the world and its questions. Number 15, size of your friend group doesn't matter, because we all quarantined this year and none of your friends could be over at your house. I've known this for a few years, but really this year it became more apparent just how few people you actually need to survive. Like, everyone's like, oh, humans are social creatures. And it's like, well, not everyone, and everyone is social on a different sort of level. I am definitely way more of an introvert. Way more of an introvert. So it doesn't matter how many friends you have. Just have a good group of friends that you love to hang out with, who you love to talk to, and are passionate about things that you're passionate about, or at least happy that you are happy about the things that you are passionate about. Does that make sense? Okay. 16. I have a tendency to break things. I learned that this year. I'm going to get better about it. I've broken like 4 things in the last month by accident. Nope. 5 things. 5 things. But it is something I'm going to be working on in 2021. I know that I need to be more careful when I'm cooking and I need to be more careful about what I put in the laundry and what I put in the dishwasher. That is what I know. Moving on. We don't need to address those stories. Number 17. Holidays are just a suggestion and mostly plagiarized by Christians from pagan religions. Okay, so we learned this year in quarantine that holidays aren't really necessary. And while they are fun to go to holiday parties and to hang out with family, it was also just really nice not to stress about having to go see people that I may not like. Moving on. Number 18 is something that I have debated talking about for a while. Only a few people really know this about me. I'm a witch. I practice witchcraft. Yeah. So this really is a more recent period of my life, and it's something that I'm still exploring. But basically, I'll leave a link down in the description of the differences between like witches, paganism, religion, and stuff. It's a video done by a witch, but she explains everything really well. And yeah. Witchcraft. That is something I learned this year, and it is something it is something I will continue to pursue in 2021, because I think it's a really significant part of me now. Number 19, and this is very important and kind of goes along with everything I've been saying already, and that is that you cannot plan for everything. You could be the best planner in the world. You could have had your savings, and then this year happens, and you lose all your savings. And like, you're still in a bad spot. And while yes, it's good to plan for certain things and to have a safety net for yourself, you can't plan for everything. We got rear-ended on Halloween, and it was a hit and run. So the lady literally hit us, sideswiped the car, and like she like rear-ended, then backed up, then sideswiped us and ran off. So yeah. And luckily we were okay, but like, how do you plan for that? You can't. Like, there are some things that are just out of our control. And number 20, This one is really important because it's the 20th one. The 20th one of 2020 is very important. Let go. Do not forget what happened this year. Do not forget it. But let go of some of those emotions. Earlier this year, I was very angry. I was in a place that I have never been more angry in my life at the world and people who I was holding responsible. And like I mentioned earlier, it's not a good idea to hold any one person responsible for what's happened, because one person is not responsible for everything that happened. Can one person have contributed to the issue? Yes. But is one person to blame for everything that happened this year? No. Because the fact of the matter is, a highly contagious disease broke out. And yes, it could have been handled better. But it wasn't. And there's a lot of people in line for why that didn't happen. It's not just one person. There's a lot of people that go into governing and to go into government. And holding on to anger or resentment is not healthy, because the only person it's affecting is you. The only person it's hurting is you. Anger is a product of something. That is what I learned this year. Anger is a product of sadness. It is a product of frustration and hopelessness. And I was angry because I was frustrated, because I felt like no one was doing enough. And I felt hopeless because I knew that me and so many other people like me were the ones that were going to be suffering. So remember, I guess, I mean, this one's a little bit hard. Just like remember, but like don't hold on to the emotion. Hold on to the things you learned. That's it. That's it. Don't hold on to the emotions. Hold on to the things you learned. You don't got to hold on to the anger. You don't got to hold on to the sadness you experienced, the loneliness. But do hang on to the things you learned when you were going through all of that. Because that's how you stay true to yourself. So in 2021, I'm letting go of the anger I felt this year, the frustration at the situations I've been in. And just because it's turning 2021 does not mean that everything's going to magically change. We're still experiencing the consequences of everything that's happened. And we will be for years to come. So we have to keep all the things we learned this year in mind, or we're just going to end up going in circles and destroying ourselves. But yeah, I'm Pensive Fox. These have been my thoughts on 2020, and I look forward to seeing you all in 2021. I make no promises for more than one video next year, but let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd love to have a discussion with you and discuss some of the things you might have learned in 2020. Thanks, you guys. Stay safe and have a happy new year.